Hello, this is Jaromir again. In the first video I did show you how to create button disks, and now I will show you how to deploy the first scenario. So it's super easy. Just right click deploy PS1 and select run with PowerShell. It will again elevate. And the script, what it will actually do, it will import the DC that was creating during create button disk during creating button disk script. It will import it. You can see it created snapshot. So if you will decide to clean up the lab, it will simply remove the snapshot from the DC, delete the machine, and recover the machine from the zip file that was created in the DC folder under the lab folder. So now it will wait a little bit for AD to start. So as you can see, the DC is booting now. You can already connect to it, and just to see the screen, you should be able to see that you were asked for the enhanced session. So an enhanced session is basically active from scratch from the very same moment. So you can even log in if you want, but let's wait a little bit more. As you can see, there is a red line. This is expected because what is happening is that PowerShell direct session is being active, and I'm now trying, or actually script is now trying to query objects from the Active Directory. And because the Active Directory is not yet started, then it's returning this error, and I didn't find to suppress it. So let's try to log in. So let's use lab admin and ls1 setup exclamation mark. This is the default password, and then I will show you how to configure these passwords if you would like to create your own users, but it will be in the next video. Actually, you can see now the AD is up and running, therefore it will do some actions against the DC using PowerShell Direct. Now it will make tools disk online, so tools disk will be available on the DC as a D drive. It's making tools disk online just because it's not defined in the SAN policy on the servers to automatically mount SCSI devices because it may be shared device, therefore it's not online on the disk on the server SKU, unlike client SKU where this disk is online by default. As you can see, tools are here. So that's the folders created with create parent disks. This was created during the first script, during the prereq in the tools VHD folder, and then during the create parent disk it was converted to the VHD and copied to the VHD. So what next we will need? So in the how-to, multiple steps there's described how you can do this, what we did, but with text. So if you are lazy to read it, you can just watch these videos. That's probably what you are doing now. And what you can do is to continue with hyperconverged scenario. There is a lab config for each scenario. There is a lab config. So this one is the same as we now have, because I didn't modify it, and by default it will create you 4 nodes, and you can see that nodes probably will be already at least some created. So it's now being created. And the scenario also means that there is a scenario PS1. In the scenario PS1 is an end-to-end script that you can run from the DC or management VM. So let me just switch to raw, where I can simply copy everything just by selecting everything and copy it into the clipboard. The next step what I will do is to open up the PowerShell ISE in the DC itself. So after the PowerShell ISE is opened, I'll just paste the script like this, so you can study it. If you don't want to study it, just hit Ctrl M and you can see the sections what's actually happening in high level. So there is something I call lab config, where you have like variables. If you would deploy this scenario in the real world, you would probably change the names of the, for example, cluster or cluster updating role and so on. So let's check if the VMs were created. So now the fourth VM is being created. So the next step I will do is I'll just wait for the VMs to be started. After it will be created, I'll just say, hey, start, like that, because they are by default not turned on. They are just turned off. And yes, now it's adding the virtual disks and it will soon finish. So yeah, so it will also set the MAC spoofing and allo teaming just to be able to create set switches inside the VMs. And also it will configure VLANs or to the NIC management NICs to be 1 to 10. So these are allowed VLANs. It took like 6 minutes, so it's really fast. You can then press enter to continue. The next step would be start the VMs. As it's core server, it will take some time. If you don't want to wait, just use nano service in the lab config by just simply modifying lab config, and we will cover this in the next video. So let's take a look on the script itself. I'll just copy everything, like select all, copy. I will run PowerShell as administrator, more run as administrator. And I will just wait before I will paste the script for machines to boot up. To be 100% sure that everything is right, you can add the servers here in all servers. You can see there was these machines were already in contact with Active Directory, because we can see that the addition is Windows Server 2016 Data Center. So I'll just add it, wait a little bit more. Because what may happen if you add the machines too soon, it will not be recognized as the first thing, but the DNS will actually report that there is an unknown address. So let me check if it will return some IP address. So this is good, so IP addresses are being returned. But if you do this too soon, for example, when the machines are turned off, then it may be an issue, because you will query DNS and DNS will not return anything, and you will cache this response. So when you will try to ping the node again, it will not return anything, so you will have to do clear DNS client cache or ipconfig flush DNS for flushing local DNS cache. So let's wait a little bit for the VMs to boot. As you can see here at the bottom, there's still Hyper-V logo, so the machine is still booting. It's more than 1 minute, so actually I was lying when I was telling it will take like 30 seconds. It's probably 2 minutes. Nano service would be already started. That's why it's really useful for the labs, especially if you have larger scenarios where you have like 10 VMs or even more. As you can see, the errors about target computer not accessible. That's expected because the machines didn't boot yet. You can even connect to the machines and check what's there, but you will see the same. You will see the Hyper-V logo. Okay, it looks promising. Enhanced session mode was kicked in. Okay, we don't actually care. So others are also started. You can see the small window here. This is a Windows Server Core default, let's say, login screen. Let's refresh. Just double checking if everything is fine with the computers, if it booted correctly, if it's joined correctly to the domain. As you can see, everything is fine, so there are no Kerberos issues. So the next step would be just copy the script like that and right click into the PowerShell window. You can also do it like copying region by region or even line by line just to see what's happening, but I prefer, if I need to do it fast, just to right click like that and just watching the script doing its work. Also, what you can do, you can inspect what's happening by different tools, like what features are already added or not. When the cluster is created, you can connect to it, but let's pause the video now. I will just resume the recording after the cluster will be created, and I will just walk through what's there. So as you can see, the script just finished. It took 36 minutes to do this all job. So there was one minor issue. It wasn't possible to create one disk on the virtual machine. Sometimes happen, but let's take a look what actually happened. So let's open up the failover cluster manager from the domain controller. Let me put this full screen so you can enjoy it. I will connect to the cluster. I will browse. So you can see here there's a new cluster called S2D cluster. There's one warning. The warning is about cluster updating and the access on the object in the ID, so it's not a big deal. There are some virtual machines created. There's one missing. That's why we saw the error. For nodes, you can see that site and rec was applied. So this is full domain XML, which was created. As you can see, there are 8 virtual disks. There are mirror and mirror accelerated parity. You can also see that the paths are renamed, so it matches the volume names. There's a pool that has capacity in 192 terabytes because it has quite a lot of disks. There are 12 disks per each node, so it's 48 4-terabyte disks. It means 192 terabytes. You can see that there is set switch, so management is actually the VNIC on each node. And SMB, there are 2 VNICs per each node. This just simulates real world scenario. So this way you can play with anything you want. This looks like a real cluster. You can even start the VMs if you enable nested virtualization. In this case, the nested virtualization is not enabled. But these VMs are just, empty, nothing. So if you just go to the settings and check what's the hard drive. So let's open up the cluster shared volume. Cluster like that. So you can see that there are 3 machines on each volume, except here I think we are missing one of the machines. So this was not created for some reason. So there's machine and the disk is just empty, nothing. So just if you start a machine, it will do nothing. It will not even boot because the hard drives are just 4 megabytes empty VHDs. That's it. You can play with anything, and if you don't like the lab, you can just clean it up by right-clicking and run with PowerShell and the cleanup. It will again ask you if you want to run it and elevate. It will list all the resources that will be deleted. In this case, everything that has the same prefix as configured in lab config. So in this case, it's the virtual machines, the virtual switch, and the domain controller. So let's say yes. It will apply, remove the checkpoint, remove the VM, delete the folders, and you can now again run deploy and deploy any other scenario. So let's take a look in the lab config in the next video, and see you soon.